It is out on video on demand today, and I am pleased to join the director, Emerson Moore, who joins us on the Film Threat livecast with us today. Emerson, good to meet you, sir.
Good to meet you. How are you guys?
Doing great. Tell us how this project came about and how you made, I don't see how you made a cornfield that, I mean, there are these amazing shots sort of that are like these above shots. I don't want to say drone shots necessarily, but like that just show you the vastness of how they're all trapped. But what drew you to the script? How did you get involved in this project? And just tell us how this whole thing came together.
Okay, great. I think you're talking about the opening shot.
Yes, yeah, it's great.
Up above. We did that with a drone and then stitched it into a crane, which then went down onto another thing. So it's a series of shots. That's how it was done. I had first read like a super early draft of this a few years back. It was sent to me from a producing friend back then, and I just fell in love with the story and the concept immediately, and had connected with my writing partners on it. And we had spent a lot of time just kind of working on different ideas and concepts and how the film would work together. And we're ramping up into it. I guess that would have been end of 2019-ish, right in that area. And there was a plan where we were gonna shoot this thing very differently than what ended up happening. Then the pandemic happened, and somehow or another we got it put together and literally shot right in the middle of the pandemic in September. So that presented a lot of challenges in and of itself, and we had to change a few things and kind of tweak a few things to fit to that model of being trapped in a hotel and in a bubble and having one single set to work from. So there were no stages and no production moves. We just were in a cornfield.
Well,
that's how it happened.
Yeah, it works amazingly. It's not, someone asked in the chat, and we'll get to your chat questions. Please post your questions for Emerson here, and we'll get to those questions. But someone asked, is it sci-fi? I mean, I would say, sort of borderline for sure sci-fi. I would say it's like a really good episode of The Twilight Zone, sort of in that realm where you're like, what are they doing here? And there's like, what I do like is not just the questions that are answered, but the questions that remain unanswered, right? Like, I think sometimes a lot of movies today try to over-explain things. So how did you, and what I love also is sort of the peeling back of the onion of like the characters and sort of how they're introduced, and each of them have their own kind of agenda and their own secrets. So one, it had to be obviously challenging to shoot during COVID. There are all sorts of, crazy rules. And I think that some of those are still being used, but how difficult was it to shoot during the pandemic?
The interesting thing was we were one of the very first films to actually shoot. So there were no rules. We kind of had to develop them, and the production worked closely with SAG and, developed guidelines. We had COVID specialists and, these different groups. And we were still doing the foot-long stick down your nose routine, on the daily, which was just terrible. But we made it through pretty much unscathed. We had a false positive and missed one day of shooting, I think, overall, but we never shut down, which was great. And it probably, has a lot to do with, we're in the middle of a cornfield. So smaller cast out in the middle of the field. Those aspects were great. We truncated the crew, and, I shot the film single camera, which was, that was fun. And just kind of pared everything down so we could actually make the film. There were, some other ideas and things there that are, that we weren't able to do because we weren't able to go to stages or into any other locations. So kind of just had to kind of tweak things at the end a bit to fit what we had to work with.
Let's go some really great comments and questions here in the chat. So I'm going to go to some of these. Zach says, very recognizable cast with Theo Rossi and Shane West.
Yeah.
So There you go. That's great. Piers Bronson for $5 super chat says, "You guys have encouraged me in thinking long term about independent filmmaking and building a team studio in the works. Keep it up. Thanks again." Yeah, we feature a lot of indie filmmakers. We bring them on because I want to inspire our viewers to get involved in independent film. That's
Sure. Yeah.
what we're about. And then Jack D. Ripper asks, "What other directors, films, or TV programs influence this film?"
That's a great question. I hadn't really thought about it, but I've noticed, a lot of people have referenced the opening to Lost, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I see it too, as well. Other films that influenced this were Cube was one that comes to mind. I mean, that film had always stuck with me. And my writing partners also had an idea of that kind of conceptual idea in there as well. And then kind of the escape aspect of it kind of developed a little bit further, and this kind of what is it, who's trapped them in the field, and what that is. The answers are all there. They're in the film. If you look, you'll figure it out pretty quick. Pay attention to what Denise is saying. She's going to tell you exactly why they're there.
Well, now I have to see it again.
Yeah.
Our comment says, "If you build it, they will come, but they can't get out." That could have been your tagline.
Yeah, it was. And touching back to Theo and Shane, I mean, those guys, and Jordan and Elena and Tahira and Ethan, all of them, Julian, they were all just so amazing and really went for it. And it was a lot of fun. I'd worked with Theo in the past, and Shane really responded to the script and the ideas of what we were doing, and real pleasure working with them. Super talented.
That's great. For Emerson, with filming in a cornfield, how hard was it to film in such close spacing to get that claustrophobic feel? Yeah, the movie does feel really claustrophobic, but then also just like this sense of like you're just trapped and you don't even know how to get out. It's just like it's a crazy feeling that you get watching this film.
So the way that I approached it, and that was a challenge that was actually weighing heavily on my mind before shooting, was, how do I not make this feel like we're just in the cornfield?
Right.
How do we make it feel different to where that doesn't become a factor? So I started looking at different ways to use foreground and background, use distant focal points, put things into a distant space, and open up the frame. I shot widescreen on anamorphic, so that tended to open up the frame as well. And I just tried to find my moments to lift up out of the field and give everybody a breather for a moment, and then make use of that claustrophobic feeling when we're in really close. So that was the big thing, is just look for your moments of how you can use the frame to give a different feel, using different angles or paths, then shooting flat occasionally here and there.
Some more comments here. Sean Hu says, "I love the idea where it's an escape room tale, but it's outside, presumably without walls."
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, being trapped in a wide open space. That was definitely something that we thought about as well. It's like, what if this was just no end? Like there was no discernible, like, a building over there, or, things you would see in a cornfield, like the edge. So that was a big concept.
Goober says, "Ironically, it doesn't look corny at all." And then Solomon Thornton says, "Any advice for beginning filmmakers?"
Yeah, you have a huge advantage these days. Everyone has like a film studio in their hand, basically, which is just amazing, and readily accessible avids. You can still go back and jump on Final Cut, which I haven't used forever, or Premiere. But having all of these things, and just start shooting stuff, just start writing stuff and shooting stuff, and writing stuff and shooting stuff. Like I remember when I was a kid, it was just more. I remember my siblings would shoot stuff on Super 8, or we would find a VHS. I remember those days, and it was always a little bit strange getting two VCRs and trying to edit that way. It was just stupid. But nowadays, it's just so much that you can do with everything that's right there for you. I mean, I had used, whether it be my phone or my iPad, and different viewfinders. Even in this film, I storyboarded everything on the whole film prior to shooting, just on an iPad with an Apple Pencil. So that's my advice: is just start shooting stuff.
Dempsey asked, do you remember the moment when you decided that filmmaking was your career calling?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Gosh, I was super young, and I remember I'd seen Phantasm by accident.
Oh, love that movie.
Yeah, that, and then like I remember seeing Rosemary's Baby, and then gosh, oh, the other one, Animal House, like all of this stuff, and then it just kept coming, and Dress to Kill, Carrie, Exorcist, and that was it. I was hooked. Like it was
Well,
literally nothing else to do.
yeah, Don Coscarelli's Phantasm is so great. I also saw it at like probably too young an age, and it's such a great film.
You're like, what is this? What is this? What is this stuff? Yeah, I remember that. There was, remember what The Thing, of course. Gosh, but all of these, I would see because my older siblings, or over at a friend's house, and somebody had something and their parents weren't around, and boom, all of a sudden you see something like that. It's indelible impression is left. And like, how do I do that? I mean, I grew up here in LA, so it was, extra on a movie set or PA or whatever it would be. And you just kind of find a way.
Right. Another question here from Flaccid Phoenix asks, how much did the story change from the first draft you read to the finished product?
That's a really good question. All the basics were there. A couple characters were a little bit different. But the basics are there. 6 strangers wake up in a cornfield, each with a different item. And then it was just a little bit more, we worked to just put a little bit more in there to, find the way that it worked. And give it a little bit more of a reason. There wasn't super clear in the beginning. It was very like, no idea. So we spent time with that and sent drafts back and forth and figured it out, but not a whole ton.
When you say the characters changed, I'm always curious about that. Was it the fact that you needed more contrast between characters maybe, or something more to service the plot?
Not necessarily, like a little bit to service the plot, but also, we wanted to get a little bit more, and it was thinned out in the final cut that was released. But there was much, backstory and who these people are. There was a lot more of that that ended up kind of getting thinned out of the final cut. And a couple other scenes that we just weren't able to shoot, with it being the circumstance of what it was in 2020. So.
And here, Zach's asked the question, Emerson, this is your first feature-length film. What surprised you about the process?
Boy, that's a good question, right? I mean, I've worked on a ton of movies. I think this is probably like the 40th feature that I've been involved with. Whether it's as a, done some editing or production managing or line producing or just straight up produced. The biggest thing that surprised me about the process on this film, particularly was shooting during a pandemic. That was really intense. Having to kind of figure out a way to do things without having your normal next steps, right? So, there were some elements that were in the script. It was physically impossible. We couldn't shoot them. We couldn't get to that location, which, I mean, it pains me. I don't want to talk about them because it's just going to, whatever. But that was the biggest obstacle, was kind of like navigating, getting things done, and really having to like find a way to do it. Well, how am I going to do it? Well, I don't know. Let's get the tractor out here and cut down some more of the field, and we'll create this and just kind of make it. And that aspect of it was a lot of fun because we didn't have the normal, resources that you would have. I mean, some people just weren't willing to work during a pandemic as well. So there were those things.
And let's see. Charles K says, I'll try to watch the film later today. Got me interested.
Great.
That's
Enjoy.
cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was some. Oh wait.
Another question here.
For
Salvatore,
sure. I can tell you 100% the dream film I would want to direct.
yeah, what is the dream film you'd like to direct?
I would like to direct the actual book, Running Man.
Oh, okay. Because the book version is so different than the
Completely.
I mean, like,
animal.
completely different. Yeah, I know that story. I haven't read it, but I've heard people talk about with the book and the differences, how much the book is so dramatically different. Yeah,
So dark.
it's so dark and horrific, and yeah. Well, you could do that. You should do that, because I'd love to see that for sure.
I mean, that would be a reach, but yeah, I would love to direct The Running Man. I mean, that's a great book. I remember getting turned on to that years ago, and reading it, comparing it to what was made. There was a lot of. It was a very different movie.
Just retitle it and do it. No one knows.
Yeah, I don't know even how you would go about it, but yeah, that's a good.
The skipping dude, maybe. Right.
And a good last question here from Charles K says, "Are you working on a current project, another project right now?"
Yeah, I am actually. We're getting super close to getting going. I'm going to be shooting back east. I can't really talk about the specifics of it, but I'm really excited about the film. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's something that I wrote with Sean together, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. I'm excited about it.
Cool. Well, Emerson Moore, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat livecast this morning. Congratulations on the film. Escape the Field is out and available now. The trailer is in the description of this episode, so you can watch the trailer or look it up on YouTube. And congrats again, and thank you for entertaining and terrifying me.
Nah,
Appreciate that.